Good evening, everyone. It is February 27th, 2024, and the time is now 6:08 p.m. I call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Sarah Lewis, the co-chair for tonight's meeting. We'll start a roll call of the members present. Frank Valdez.
Present.
Sherry Ruane.
Present.
Deborah Fennick.
Present.
Tim Talon. Andrew Abba. And Tim Hood. All right, showing 3 members. I believe we have a quorum for this evening. So we'll start with our general business. And our first order is the approval of the January 9th, 2024 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions in those minutes that need adjustment?
I do not.
All right, seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 9th, 2024 UDC meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion
Second.
by Frank, seconded by Sherry. Thank you very much. We have, oh no, wait a second. I need to take a vote. Sorry. Not with it
Deborah, you
today.
better be on board with these minutes.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Sherry,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Deborah.
Yes.
All right, and let the record show that Tim Talon has also joined the meeting this evening. So good evening, Tim. We just approved the meeting minutes. So now we are going to move on to the design reviews for this evening. The first one being 181 Pearl Street. So if the applicants could raise their hands so Madison can unmute you and set you up to present. While that is happening, I'm going to remind the applicant that they have about 20 minutes to present and point out to the commission that this is an MR3 residential building. And we'll need to take votes on the massing, the facade, design guidelines, and then any additional design guidance we might want to provide. So, good evening. Hi, Pablo. Are you going to start this one, or is this the Shauna show right now? You're muted.
Sorry. Paul's gonna start it. Sean's gonna come in after. I just wanted to introduce ourselves quickly, say hi, thank you to the commission. Also wanted to thank our case planner, Raisa. And I am Pablo Picker, my partner, Shelly Cates, and our daughter, Fuego, is on the meeting as well. We're the owners. And yeah, we're looking forward to showing you what we've come up with for this challenging MR3 site. I think it's, we're very excited. So looking forward to hearing your feedback, and I'm gonna pass it over to our architect, all-star Paul Miller.
Thanks, Pablo, and thanks again to the commission for making time for us tonight. We're excited to present our project and get your thoughts on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And it looks like I need permission to share my screen, please.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I seem to be having internet hiccup, so I'm going to be off camera for a little while and then I'll come back on later. Sorry about this.
No problem.
Right, you should be good to share your screen, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Take that as
Yes.
a yes. Thank you. So we're working at 181 Pearl Street. It's at the corner of Pearl Street and Dana Street as Pearl approaches McGrath Highway. That's a photograph of the existing conditions. There's an existing one-story former pottery studio on the site. When we started looking at the context, we saw that in the immediate surroundings, there are a lot of 2.5-story, 1 and 2 family homes, some triple deckers sprinkled in there, a gas station across the street, across Pearl Street. As you move further west on Pearl Street, you start to see more triple deckers, some larger apartment buildings. And as Pearl Street approaches Medford Street, you see larger, taller masonry buildings. And so we are interested in how our parcel here, outlined in red, as Pearl approaches McGrath, can become a kind of anchor for this side of Pearl Street in the way that the other masonry buildings, as it approaches Medford, act. We also, when we were starting to look at the site, we're happy to see that it's a very kind of well-connected site, close proximity to the Magoon Square Green Line station, multiple bus lines. It's in walking distance to the public library, parks, grocery store. So we from the beginning, have been thinking about this as a transit-oriented development and are interested in finding ways through the design to encourage bicycle use and walking and the use of public transit. I won't spend time reading through this. What we're proposing, though, is our 3 townhouses, so all residential use on the parcel, 3 stories tall. As Pablo mentioned, it's an MR3 zoned parcel, and it's adjacent to 2 NR zoned parcels, both to the west and to the north. So thinking about this, the kind of site strategy for this parcel, we're really interested in doing everything we can to make a significant improvement to the street experience here, and specifically kind of bringing some meaningful ecology to the site. It's lacking in this corner is lacking in plant life right now, and we feel like that's something that this development can really bring and improve as we work on the site. You can see the 3 townhouses here running north-south. Another significant kind of site move that we made was to put a bay window on each one of the townhouses, kind of mark them. I'm going to flip to. Here are a few material precedents that we've been looking at as we were thinking about the facade. What we're interested in are kind of tactile materials, warm masonry, and mixing in other materials to kind of balance the composition. We developed 3 options that we'll be presenting tonight. The preferred option here on the left is a mix of masonry and metal. There's an option in the middle that's all masonry with a stone base and kind of brick body. And then the option on the right is a brick base with a kind of wooden top. So looking specifically at our preferred option here, we're very interested in using brick, as I was kind of showing at the beginning, is a way of creating an anchor at this side of Pearl Street that learns from what's happening at the other side of Pearl Street. We also really like the idea of creating a datum at the 2nd floor that corresponds with the neighboring houses, and sort of how these half stories on these have a change in material. We're interested in doing something similar on our site. And so we really like the idea of using this warm masonry base with a cooler metal crown, as we're calling it. We're interested in corrugated metal, which has this nice verticality to it, and again, a kind of coolness to balance the warm brick at the base. You can also see here the 3 bay windows that I mentioned in the site plan. We're excited about this design element. It's kind of learning from its neighbors. Many of the houses in the neighborhood also have bay windows. We're bringing a bit of a contemporary interpretation of the bay here. At the ground floor, it integrates with a stoop to create a covered entryway. The second floor is a nice kind of bay window seat, and the third floor is a balcony. The window in the bay is a large, generously sized window to bring light into these units. They're primarily getting their light from this south-facing facade facing Pearl Street. They're gonna see a lot of sun. There's no shading here, kind of from vegetation or neighboring buildings. So we've been looking at different ways to provide shading on these large portions of glazing. We really like the idea of using wood or a kind of wood-like material, wood-look material, to provide different kinds of louvers, excuse me, that provide a kind of diversity of architectural expression and pick up on some of the other datum lines in the building. So that's what you're seeing here in the second floor, is a couple different kinds of, excuse me, louvers and a trellis. Back down at the ground floor, I also want to point out the base of the building is creating that really important public realm element for us of the planter beds that we can bring native species and pollinators to. Shauna Gillis-Smith from Ground is going to talk more about that after we're done with the facade conversation. But from early on, we thought of the landscape design as an integral part of the facade design. So you also see that we've designed a kind of stainless steel cable trellis on 2 faces of the building so that we can get some vertical greenery on the building. Go to the next slide. This is a view of the corner at Pearl and Dana that we saw earlier with the existing 1-story building. You can see trellises again here on the Dana Street side that extend 2 floors up, providing more kind of vertical greenery. We're also exploring, we really like the idea of these tall vertical louvers on the east-facing facade to provide some solar shading on there are large windows behind those you'll see in the next slide. I also want to point out that this base is this planter bed is turning the corner and providing this planted area on both Pearl Street and Dana. At the edge of the planter bed is a seat wall. We're designing it at seat height so that it can be a place, becomes part of the public realm. We're looking here at the Dana Street elevation. You can see those wood louvers a bit more clearly here. And I also want to point out the bulkhead cladding we're thinking of as wood in this design. I think we're interested in a product called Acre by Modern Mill. It's a recycled rice hull product, which looks really beautiful. It looks like wood, but it performs nicely. It doesn't have the kind of negative environmental effects of some other wood look synthetic products. Here's a detailed view of the Pearl Street elevation that gives a little bit more of a sense of what's going on at ground level. In our preferred design here, we really like the idea of doing structural brick porches at the bottom of the bay. We can use real structural lintels. Here we're showing kind of a precast lintel that picks up the same material as the seat cap, the seat wall cap down below. And those porches are open on 3 sides. There's a window. If I go back, you probably can see it. There's a window here on on the east and west faces of that porch. So you get a nice kind of view through. Okay, next slide. We have also thought through the ventilation for the building. The vent caps are going to be collected on the north facade. We won't see any vents on other faces of the building. Our intention is to put them all on this face and align them, and to use a spherical steel cap that feels integrated with the rest of the facade. One other thing I'm just going to point out before I move on here is that you can see up at the top there's a railing. That's because we've pulled the parapet wall down a little bit rather than holding it at guard height, to make it feel a little bit less tall and also improve the experience up there on those roof decks. There's a front and a rear roof garden, as I pointed out in the site plan, and we feel that this is a kind of important design move. All right, I'll go a little bit more quickly through this other two options. This is a mostly all brick option, except for the entry porches are stone blocks. Something like a limestone is what we're imagining. Again, something warm that is similar in tone to the brick. So it's a bit more monolithic of an appearance. And this is kind of where we started, actually, when we were looking at the buildings down the way on Pearl Street, being those monolithic red brick buildings. Initially, that was sort of our preference, but actually, as we looked more at it, we felt like adding some kind of material change at the top floor made it feel more aligned with its neighbors around it, those 2.5-story houses. And here some of the shading details are metal instead of wood. That would be something like a powder-coated aluminum or steel. But same strategy with the planter bed and the kind of emphasis on bringing ecology to the site. Zoomed in view of those entry porches, you can see those larger masonry limestone blocks that make up the entryway. Okay, and then one more option. This one is a dark brick with a wooden crown that's either a charred wood or a stained wood, but also vertically oriented, the same way that we have the vertically oriented corrugated metal panel in the preferred scheme. Okay, so here's just a summary again, the three options and our preferred shown here on the left. I won't go through the zoning table in detail, but just note that we've submitted our application for 2 hardship variances for side setbacks and for the paved sidewalk width. And I'm going to hand it over to Shauna Gillis-Smith now to talk about the landscape design.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. We're very happy to be joining this team. So it's a relatively tight site. We've as Paul described, the overall landscape strategy on the ground plane is in planters associated with the building. We're including at the ground level. We're including Itea, Ilex, and Rudbeckia in raised planters. The area, the gray gravel surface, is an area that I don't know if you described it, Paul, but it's egress from the basement areas. So we're planting, and then vine planting going up the facade. We can move to the next slide. And then at the roof level, although not in the public realm, just to give a sense of what we're looking at with the units, the central staircase is in the middle, separating the outdoor space into two different areas. The front area is designed to be a fairly simple deck with an ornamental grass and alliums planted within it, but relatively quiet. And then the back area is really kind of the wild garden. It's primarily shady, but we're looking for shade-tolerant pollinator species. And so the idea is a series of stepping stones, benches that may or may not be the same bench in different arrangements, and an overall sort of more kind of meadow wildy look in the back area. And we can move. I won't go through each of the plants, but it gives a sense. So this gives you an overall impression of what we're thinking about. The vine trellis that Paul was describing, you can see images of them in the top left two images. And then, well, not exactly the same species in the planters or on the ground plane, you get the overall sense of the deck sitting within either the ornamental grass or the meadow-like landscape in the back, and then street level planters with a mix of planting within it. And next. So the overall plant species, I would say not almost all native. We may be using Pennisetum pectorites as the grass on the roof. Just because of the way that it masses so much differently, but that's all being taken into accordance in the green score calculation that we've done. And we can go. So talking about the green score, and we could go through this in detail, but in general, to kind of hit the summary, it's a little hard for my eyes to see right now, but in the MR3 district, our required score is 0.25 and the target score is 0.3. With our preliminary calculations based on the soil depth, I think the other thing I didn't describe is we have a permeable paver passage along the back alley. Our preliminary score is 0.43, which is above the target area. In this case, we're including the Pennisetum as a non-native grass, and we did not include the vines because we were just really looking at the square footage of the way that this is calculated. It isn't calculated with a vertical calculation. We are including some, typical details for the permeable pavers in the back lane, and then a detail of the seat wall that was capped with bluestone that wraps the two corners of the building, as well as a typical ground cover and shrub and perennial planting detail. And I think that might be it. I know I went through it extremely quickly, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Shauna, real quick, I think on the elevation or the plan, the seat wall, it said precast concrete, but this is a cast in place wall with a bluestone cap. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think like Paul, is it? I mean, this is actually.
I think that we're not at that level of detail yet. It would be it's going to either be something like bluestone or precast concrete cap.
Right, the wall is what I'm more curious about. Is it a cast in place wall or is it a unit masonry?
I don't think it can be cast in place and give us the result that we want, the kind of refined level of finish. So if it is cast in place, then we would have a cladding on the face of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I guess Sherry, I don't think we updated these drawings from the last discussion with Paul, but it would therefore be precast.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that material. I just don't want it to be like a Teco block.
Oh.
You know, I don't want it to look,
No, I think if it's precast, it would likely be the just a custom precast unit, a repeated custom precast unit. So it wouldn't be multiple
Mhm.
broken down pieces. It would just be one one piece.
Yeah, as a
One height.
team, we have higher design standards than that. We wouldn't want to see a higher quality material there.
good news.
Actually, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
And Sherry, I apologize, I'm playing outside of my lane, but only because recently where we've had the vines shown on buildings, there's been a couple of times where they've had to come in for plan revisions because essentially they don't grow because they're not maintained enough, or they don't have a proper a bed to grow in. So how can we be certain that these will actually take?
Well, we're intending to use a couple of different, 2 or 3 different vine species to see which works the best. We have we have 24 inches of soil depth in that area. So it's not, we have full ground underneath it, and we're not, so we're giving real depth to those planters. So that's really the strategy. I mean, we're working with with a couple of different clematis species. We're still trying to find another species because we need the perfect one that, for the tall one, doesn't require a lot of maintenance, but so for the front ones, we're pretty clear that a couple of clematis are working. The ones on the side, we're using clematis plus another species that we're still trying to find the perfect one that isn't going to overwhelm the facade.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that as well, just from a, longer term seasonal impact, and then how you maintain that, so the
Yeah.
clematis, Shauna, in the winter, it just has a completely different presence
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and that's why we're also using a nice structure that behind it, that it
Mhm.
also we're understanding it's going to go dormant, and it won't be, it's not going to be an evergreen.
Right. And I'm not sure if this is a restriction based on your sidewalk width allowance or not, but and I forget exactly how wide you're trying to get permission to do, but I'm assuming it's not wide enough for street trees, because that would make a massive difference on this corner and sort of help contribute to the Somerville's overall climate resilience strategies as far as
Yep.
urban heat island
Yeah.
goes.
That's what we wanted to do.
Mhm.
But there are some significant constraints here. There's a lot of utility and urban furniture, if you will, along here, as well as a curb cut, manhole cover. And based on the sidewalk width, we just didn't feel like there was enough room to get a kind of meaningful tree there. And we felt like the vines would be more impactful.
Can I ask a follow-on question to that as well? And as much as this is a new build and a brand new design, why can you not achieve the sidewalk width that you need to actually ask for a hardship variance? Because I'm
Well,
not seeing anything in this
so-
lot that sort of,
So to your question, Sarah,
yeah.
isn't a requirement that there needs to be a civil drawing or civil engineer drawings as part of the submission, so that we understand that there has been an analysis and we see the context that you're asking? I mean, obviously,
We should have dimensions on a plan, yeah.
we should have a civil engineer drawings on this as part of that. But you can answer, Paul, you can answer Sarah's question before I go.
Okay. We did not know about the civil engineer site plan requirement. We have an architectural dimension site plan, as well as a survey included in the submission.
It would be nice to see those when you present them as well. we don't get to see your submission, we get to see this part.
Okay. So Sarah, I think your question is fair. The answer is it's a tight site. It's a small MR3 parcel. And we are interested in contributing a kind of meaningful amount of housing to the neighborhood, to the city, and pushing the bases of the walls back means losing bedrooms. And so it was a choice that we made to hold the street wall set 12 feet back from the curb. So the main facade is set back 12 feet from the curb, which we felt like it was following the spirit of that zoning guideline, and putting more plant life here in what could be the paved sidewalk zone was making a positive contribution to the public realm and to the urban ecology.
It would be interesting to see if that could be an analysis or something. The one thing, Paul, that I would say, and anybody can come into this, is like, it would have been nice to see a set of plans of the building, is that you've provided, a nice set of renderings that we can see, but I still don't understand the building from the inside and its association with spaces. I know that there's requirements that we have on the idea of like, well, I know there's an egress in the back, I would like to understand really well how there's a trash handled, as well as where is the bike parking for the residents. There is a requirement on that. And I guess, Sarah, my next question was going to be, parking, I guess, to get a relief from parking is a special permit, right? Or is this development not required to have parking, or do they have to apply for a special permit? And that was not mentioned that there's a special permit for that.
I will have to admit, Frank, I don't know. I can look up really quickly if this is in
Yeah.
a transit zone.
Yeah, it would be good to understand that,
Yeah,
just
let me
because
double check.
because I think that if you don't, you have to, it's a special permit as well. So
Yes.
So understanding that and seeing that, it would be a scenario that I would be interested in understanding more. But if not, now that I'm going one way, but understanding the plans, Paul, so that we understand how some of the requirements of like, how is the bike parking being handled for each of the buildings? How are people entering? And I think that would be something that would be helpful to understand on that. My second question would be, I know that in your submission, you refer to it as a passive house inspired. So is it passive house inspired, or are you going to achieve passive house?
What we're referring to there is using air sealing details that meet or exceed the specialized energy code.
Right, but Somerville has opted in for the stretch code, and therefore by the time that you're actually getting even a permit for this building would have to be actually passive house. From the tracking of understanding of the opt-in that Somerville has accepted and the timeline. So under my assumption and understanding of doing this, I know that you would have to actually design this to be passive house or an equivalent of that. And I think that there's two options that you have on that. So it would be interesting to learn. The only reason that I'm asking for that is because I appreciate the fact that you put all the exhaust going through the back of the building. And I think that that's a good thing for dryers and anything that you need. But if you're going to be doing passive house, I would assume that you're going to be using ERV units and that you're going to be somehow mechanically heating and cooling this fully electric, so that it needs to be a roof that's going to hold these equipments for it. And you show a roof plan, but I don't see any equipment on this roof plan that would be necessary. And if you have ERVs that are going to be taking the exhaust for some of this, it would be taking some of the space of that. So a layout that shows how you deal with this and that you've foreseen that you are going to have mechanical equipment on the roof for that would be actually another thing that would be good for us to see and understand that you've thought about, or unless all of that equipment is on the ground somewhere, either on your service alley or somewhere. But that is something that is critical, that if we need to understand now, because if we don't look at it and see it, it is added after the fact, and then it's put somewhere that we don't understand, and it's not something that then we haven't talked about. So that's one thing that I would also ask you to do that.
Frank,
the
can I
yes.
just really reel you in a minute? Can we
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
urban design?
Yep.
Thank you. You're being
but
an
it-
architectural wonk, which I totally appreciate. You know
But
that.
doesn't that impact the roof though? And we are
Absolutely.
absolutely, right? It does
Absolutely.
impact the roof. And
Yeah.
I'm asking, what
Yeah.
is that impact,
Nope,
right?
you're right.
So it's important to understand that because it impacts the roof garden potentially. And if that impacts the roof garden, it impacts the green score. So I'm just pointing it out that those are things that we should look at. I mean, if you're saying, Sarah, that we shouldn't look at them and we shouldn't be privy to those things, then
No, I am just saying you are diving deep into architecture.
okay. All right. So I can stop if you want, or I can continue.
No, please keep going because I mean, I'm dying to talk about the floor to floor heights that look taller than everything around it. So please
And
keep
then
going.
the last comment that I was going to say is when you presented your three options, I think that your three options with your preferred option, and you can go to that option to that page if you want. I think one of the things that we typically ask or that we enjoy seeing when we see these preferred options and additional options is the idea that you've investigated some additional massing or different urban and pedestrian movements to the facade and the way that the building sits. But when I look at them, they really look all the same. And the one thing that just changes is just a change in materiality. And I think that is not going far enough in what we typically would like to see in the presentation of options, in which we like to see some exploration and other opportunities that you thought to see, that gives us actually a palette to look at beyond just the same thing with like, this is gray and this is slightly grayer and this is slightly darker, but that you give us, options that are representative of your studies, looking at the site and different options and how that could be served for the 3 units that you provided. And I'll stop right now if you want, Sarah.
That
No,
said,
I just had I had a quick question, Frank. So this has been a little bit of we had this conversation with our case planner as well. Our understanding of the MR3 zone and with 3 stories is that we are only required to present one massing. So it would be helpful to have a little bit more clarification when you say massing and play of massing. What exactly does that mean? Because we've
well, when you
heard
look at
that
these
before
things,
and it's
yeah,
confusing.
I think that if you would have played a little bit more with a richer palette of materiality, I think that it would have given you an opportunity for that. But to me, when I look at the 3 options, they look the same. Whether it's a massing or just a materiality thing, they still look the same. So it's really hard to say, wow, I really think that your preferred option is really the best investigated of them all, that is being presented. I don't know if that answers your question, Pablo.
It does. Thank you.
I had a similar comment as Frank about the ground floor. In particular, it would be helpful to see that. But I did appreciate the presentation that you gave. I think there's a level of attention to materiality, detail, and landscape design that we don't often see in buildings at this scale. So I did want to recognize that and appreciate it. To me, these do feel like 3 different options. They are 3 different options for materiality. I think when we've seen this on other projects, we've seen explorations of different window sizings and spacing. So not necessarily different massings, but different architectural treatments that go beyond just the application of materials. It could be different heights of the bays. One of the comments was, the bays feel very tall for 2-story bays. So something like that could be explored in different options. But I feel like this massing is pretty successful and pretty elegant. I agree with your preferred option. Comfortable supporting that. One question I did have is about the north elevation and the 3rd story of the north elevation. Why there's no windows on there?
Yeah, I can pull up floor plans. We're happy to share them. It's a shame they weren't included in here. We didn't have guidance to submit them, so I'm sorry that they're not included here. There are bathrooms on this wall. The north wall is a plumbing wall, and that's why there are no windows in it.
Yeah, I'd say the Pearl Street facing side of the building feels like it is rich, there's depth in the facade, there's attention to detailing and materiality. Given the height of this building, especially the height relative to surrounding buildings, I feel like this is gonna be a pretty visible side. At least the third story will be. So maybe that would be a location where some additional attention could be paid.
You mentioned
Um,
height, Tim, and I was going to ask
Yeah,
Sarah. Sarah, you mentioned
I
height.
need to flag
Yeah.
something really quickly,
Okay, go
just
for
because
it.
I think there is a larger issue here. If this is an MR3, row houses are not allowed. That's a UR building type. So I'm trying to, in the background, I'm trying to figure out, this should be an apartment building type in an MR3. So I'm doing a quick review of the, to make sure that if this building will classify as an MR3 instead of row houses. So I apologize for that, Paul, but keep going, everybody, because I think there's a lot of massing issues and details that we can still talk about regardless of the zoning building type.
Well, I was going to ask about the height, Sarah. The height limit is 38 feet, I believe, in an MR3. But
it's
if
40.
is it, huh?
I think it's 40.
I have the zoning open right now, and I think I was reading 38. But even if it's 40 or 38, it would be nice to understand where the height of the top element is, and is it measured to the top of the roof or to the top of that bulkhead that goes up? So which is the
It's measured.
qualifying?
It's measured to the top of the roof,
So the top of the roof is 40 or 38,
38 feet.
and then the bulkhead above that is not considered part of the height. That's just the stairs going up.
My understanding is that there's an allowance for a bulkhead. Yes, that would be above 38 feet for those stairs.
Do you have a version of this view that shows the house to the right with the blue comment in it?
Hidden by the tree in this one. I don't. It's 2.5 stories, similar to the neighbor here on Pearl Street.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead, Deborah.
Oh, okay. I think to that point, I do think you have referenced neighboring buildings, and it would be helpful to have seen those, that would have made a lot of additional information, but I think that would have been worthwhile. I keep wanting to go to Street View, but not wanting to continue to pay attention. I feel like what you have presented does feel like you studied a lot of options. And I think it's pretty successful, the one that you've chosen, with as long as it is quite vertical, and I like that about it. I feel like there's a cohesiveness with the base of the building being a single color, the bay windows being that color also, that it holds together, and I think has a lot of integrity, in terms of the kinds of references you might see for, row houses like that. I do think it could take, some articulation, a little like the separation between that third floor and the lower floor. One of your options showed a sort of a deeper shadow or something, maybe a little bit of a setback. It seems that there's a setback in the side, but maybe just a little more of a setback so that there's a little more of a separation of those things. And I mean, this is a detail. I feel like the railing at the porches would be an interesting thing to make a little more visible. Right now, they're very delicate. If you didn't point them out, I wouldn't have noticed them. But I sort of appreciate the verticality of this, and with all in general, the moves that you made with the stoop and the transparency of those entries. The seeing through those, the airiness of them. I think are all really, I think they add a really nice texture and shadows and all that to the facade. So I'm supportive of the option that you identified as a preferred option. And I'm curious what the material was on the bulkhead again, that the wood light.
Yeah, it's a product called Acre by Modern Mill.
Okay.
Is
I have
that
some
face
right here
where the
with me.
mouse is
So-
on currently, is
This is
that coplanar with the metal panel below?
It's not, it's set back. I'd like to set it back as far as we can. It's probably going to be about 6 inches.
Okay.
It's
So,
not a lot. It's a small setback.
Yeah.
so Sarah, you need to clarify because row houses are allowed in UR districts. So,
That is correct. I am ferociously in the background trying to figure out what is going on. This very well could be an issue that was missed in review by my team and ISD, who is responsible for compliance. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I understand what's happening before I speak out of turn too
so
much.
I don't think that we should continue on this, either voting on this or anything, because we don't even know whether the project is compliant with what they're proposing and whether they're pursuing a parking relief as well. So, I mean, I don't want to waste these people's time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a little unfortunate.
Yeah, it would be to completely waste of time for them. But
Yeah.
somebody should have picked that up.
Can I just ask a quick architectural question? Which I get that this may actually comply with all the things. My question just is, like, I think that this would be a beautiful building on Mystic Ave or in Assembly Row. I really do. I'm just having a hard time looking at it with the juxtaposition of all of its neighbors. And I'm not saying we need to preserve 2.5 stories forever, but it's jarring from an urban design, an urban fabric, what we as a commission are asked to do. It just feels jarring. So if it meets all the requirements, awesome, Godspeed. It's hard. And I feel like the reason I asked about street trees and other things is that I feel like that would really soften how it sits within this neighborhood fabric.
Well, currently,
Frank,
Sherry,
if-
it's not meeting
if-
the requirements currently, if you ask, because it's a row house that is not allowed under a
Yeah.
M3. So it would
Yeah, I
completely
mean,
change the
that's
whole thing.
even to Frank's point earlier about not wasting time, it's like even if so unless the hardship variance request for a 12-foot sidewalk has been approved, we should not be reviewing this at this point in time. I feel like the design might have to change if the hardship variance doesn't get approved. So I support Frank and caution the commission in moving forward.
Wouldn't part of the role of this commission be to take a position on whether that variance should be granted or not? Whether it's good urban design?
No, because unless it's a hardship variance has very, very specific state requirements to meet. And unless we know that is approved, this design will not be relevant. Does that help? Did I say that wrong? Basically, it's like the hardship variance, this design can't exist without that hardship variance being approved. And with the state requirements that are specified for a hardship variance, all three have to be met. One of which is difficulties with the site itself. And this is pretty much a flat, normal Somerville site. So it's gonna be a difficult case to make.
And
So
the parking relief and the parking relief as well.
Just
Right.
just a couple notes. I mean, I agree. Just a couple questions, Sarah. One is, how do we go about finding out about the row house as it relates to the MR3 zone, and both why that was missed or how we can clarify that? That'd be one question. That'd be very helpful. The
Yeah,
second,
absolutely.
thing, Frank, is for sure parking relief is required. We are working on another project as well over in Assembly. It was our understanding in both pre-submittal meetings for this site and the other site that that generally is not an issue. That's what we were told by the city, that getting relief falls in line with the 2040 vision for Somerville. So I'm not personally concerned about that, but I hear your point, and that will be addressed.
But
The third
legally, we cannot review it until you have those approvals.
Okay,
Right,
understood.
'cause-
So this is just one last point that has also been confusing for us. Logically speaking, it makes total sense, which as a team we discussed, that not having a hardship variance approved fundamentally doesn't make sense to get a design approved for a building that may or may not be acceptable. Again, it was told to us that both of these can happen in tandem, which is what we've done. We're here now, so at least we've put in all the work on that end. Our application for the variance is in. It just requires a payment, which finally came today, the amount. So we'll let that play itself out. I personally think we have a very strong argument. We'll see. I know the bar is high. Just for context, being abutted to NR zones, we would have to pull this in 10 feet on either side. And then with the sidewalk, I mean, you would, what we feel you would be left with is this kind of, I think, contrary to what you were saying, Sherry, this kind of small, insignificant building pulled back. I mean, it would feel like it would really disturb the urban landscape, but that's for our argument for another time. But
No,
anyways,
and
it would be helpful to understand the row house
Pablo,
aspect. That's-
Pablo,
that's-
it's not for us to figure out tonight. This is not gonna
No
happen
doubt.
tonight. This is gonna happen offline with you and the, Sarah and her group.
No
Yeah,
doubt.
we
I'm just
can't-
putting it
Yeah.
into the record, but yeah, I'm not expecting a vote
Absolutely.
tonight.
No, Pablo, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry for this hiccup along the way. I would, I'm going to recommend that the commission continue this for this evening. Give us some opportunity. I will circle back with my team and we will circle back with inspectional services who, just because there's, sort of compliance is done with all of us. So let me double check with that and we'll pause, and see where we go from there. But, I think that's the right thing to do. So I apologize for the team that this is just showing up now.
Are you
but
asking us to continue and vote?
I am asking, yes, I'm going to
I
ask
don't- I don't think we
commission-
should. I don't think we should.
No,
It's-
we're not, she's suggesting we're not voting. We're not taking.
No, it's
You want us
just,
to
it's just a continuance,
Yeah, do we need to vote
Got
on
it,
the?
got it. A
continuance?
continuance, yes. Perfect.
continuing.
Yeah.
Sure.
No,
Got
and I'd support that.
I support a
given-
continuance.
Given the apparent zoning issues. Just on the sidewalk, one thing I did want to say for the record. We've had a number of projects where this commission's talked about how residential buildings with ground floor residential units, the challenge of kind of mitigating that condition between the windows on the ground floor and the sidewalk and privacy concerns, and how that sidewalk within the 12 feet or whatever the width available is configured to create a good public realm and good ground floor units. And I feel like, setting aside the issue of the 12 feet, the way this building comes and meets the ground, the planters, the seat wall around the perimeter is pretty successful at that.
Agree.
Thank you.
All right, so at this point, I think what we should do is, can somebody make a motion to continue this project until the next meeting or until a, sort of future meeting, just to make sure that we can get the right answers that we need from a technicality standpoint?
I'll
So
move to
moved.
continue.
Second,
Seconded by, motion by Sherry, seconded by Frank. Roll call vote. Deborah,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Frank,
yes.
and Tim.
Yes,
All right. Thank you again, team. I'm sorry for these hiccups, but let's clarify and make sure we're all on the same page and moving forward the right way. So PPZ will be in touch.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Commission.
Thanks,
Have a good
Pablo.
luck with the next one. Okay, bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so our next order of business is going to be design review for 382 McGrath Highway. This is, so if the applicant team can raise their hand, so Madison can unmute you. This is an MR4 residential building. And we need to vote on the massing facades and design guidelines, plus any additional design guidelines. This was continued from 12/12 and January 9th. There was a consensus for the applicant to move forward with option 2, but there was not an official vote. So I think there were some suggestions that had been made. There was some additional feedback given on this design option in the January meeting. So this will be the third time this team has been before you. All right, who is going to be presenting? All right, terrific.
can you
A
hear me?
reminder that you have about 20 minutes to present.
Okay,
So
thank you.
thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Haosheng Zhang. I'm the architect for the 382 McGrath project. Tonight we are having Wen Jie from our architecture team and Mike from the landscape team joining us as well. May I get permission to share my screen?
Yep, just give me 1 second.
All right, thank you.
All right, you should be good to go now.
All right, let me try. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So as Madam Chair mentioned, this is the third meeting that we have, and from the previous meeting, this is just a very quick recap of the comments we have from the previous meetings. So basically, we need to provide some more facade option studies and adding more bike parking, including the long-term and short-term, and explore the potentials of adding street trees, and also adding some like more green area along the two sides of the building, as well as the complying with the ADA on the street level. And show more plant box as well in the front facade. So just a very quick recap of the location of the building. So the building is located right next to the McGrath Highway. As you can see from the bird eye view, it's about like 7 minutes walk or 0.3 miles walking distance from the East Somerville Green Line station. This is the latest renderings that were put into the street view that you can see from the north side of the facade right here. So when we approach from the north, driving to the south of the McGrath Highway, this is what we'll see right here. This is the update comparison from the previous schemes that we have on the north facade, which is like just one single materials. Right now, the latest scheme, we added a bit more variance or dynamic on this facade, just trying to break the scale of this building and trying to help to fit this massing into the neighborhood a bit more better. And we are using 4 materials in combination of fiber cement exterior board and AZEK exterior claddings, as well as the galvanized perf metal panels on the street levels. And here are a few different renderings from different angles. Like on the left side, you can see from the south looking at the building, and this is a straight shot from the street. And this is the updated elevation showing all the window openings and the materials. From the previous comments, all the windows right now are aligned, and our materials should be identified and to differentiate from the different facade. So from the last meeting, we got a comments regarding to the first floor elevation, and from in response to the comments, we basically lowered the first floor level to have the one continuous ADA ramp entering the main facade instead of going through the dumpster area. And in addition, we added a bike storage room into the first floor to provide sufficient bike storage, long-term bike storage for the tenants, for the people living inside the building. And also we had 2 more two more planter box in front of the building, just to give a more green area. Mike from the landscape team will talk about more on this area, because we moved previously we have the bike in this bike path parking in this alley. But right now we give this back to the landscape, so we will increase our green score for the project. And here's are the different levels of floor plans that we have from the basement all the way to level 4. And I'll end up with a few additional renderings for the project. And then Mike, you may share your screen to start introduce the landscape part.
Sounds good, thank you. Would you mind allowing me permission to screen share?
Yep, just 1 second.
Thank you.
All right, you should be good now.
Thank you. So from last time to this time, some of the main changes Housen kind of alluded to were this was previously permeable paving as well as 2 long-term bike racks. Since we found some room inside to put the long-term bike racks, we were able to turn this into landscape. Native plantings, low maintenance, while existing a 4.8% slope in here, and then adding 1 long-term bike parking here under the roof overhang above, keeping it sheltered from the elements. And with that, one of the other comments you guys had was to look into adding street trees. There's currently underground electric and gas lines under here, so we wouldn't be able to do it, as well as the fact that there's overhanging overhead wires, which are kind of sagging pretty low. So we also looked at the finished floor elevation, and then that created new ADA access here, which we have a 2% slope down at a sidewalk, flush entrance to the building. And so those would kind of be the main changes on our end. I'll pass it back to anyone on the team who wants to keep sharing, or we'll take any questions or comments.
So just a clarification on this. So it's a flush entry or thereabouts, less than 2% up to the main entry. And then for the entry through the trash storage area into the bike parking, you are ramping up?
We would have to ramp down, have an area drain, and then have our flush entry here. ADA access from here would, this is as low as we could go. or as high as we can go rather, to still keep that ADA access.
Can you go to the elevation view just so we can see the grading of those areas? Yeah, great.
You kind of alluded to the grading as well as, what would be in those areas.
Right.
Coupled with houses, elevations, you can see the kind of relationship between the streetscape and
Right.
those bike parking and landscape area.
Yeah. And I think last time we saw this project, we'd asked about this. What's happening outside or on your property line as far as retaining the land on either side of that? Just what does it look like? How does it interface with the street? Maybe the street view is helpful, but I don't know what's on your property and what's on your neighbors.
So currently the existing retaining wall, I think, splits right down the middle. So we're kind of proposing repairing or replacing the wall as needed. Similar style to what it is.
Do you have a front view just so I can see where those?
I do not. Indicator of kind of, you can see how it comes into that landing.
Okay.
Both existing.
How does it present at the street? Is it a like pillar? What is the?
Yes, a pillar of some sort. Honestly, I haven't put a lot of thought into the exact what that would look like.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I don't know if we talked about street trees last time, but I know this is a pretty brutal street with, a lot of traffic and stuff, but I just feel like any chance we get to add it in. But it seems like, so what is the width of the sidewalk at the point where the walls meet the edge? It's 12 feet from the face of the building, but it then gets pinched down because of the retaining walls.
That would be about 8 feet, which would be the existing condition.
Yep.
Sherry, I'll add one thing too. This portion of McGrath Highway, because it's a slip ramp, is actually DOT owned.
Okay.
So we have a difficulty getting street trees in
Yeah,
this
it's rough.
location, unfortunately.
From a survival perspective, I'm not sure they'd make
Yeah.
it, but okay.
Would love to add.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the added vegetation on either side, and pulling the sort of usable space towards the street so it doesn't feel like you're going down this long cavernous alleyway. I think that's an improvement. And I appreciate the accessible unit because I think last time there were stairs. So that I think is also a great improvement. It's actually a question I had for the last case, just mental note for myself. Yeah, I feel like these have been strong improvements.
Thank you.
All right, how do we feel, team? Are we ready to take a vote? Do we want to go back to the architecturals?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to go back to the architecturals.
Right, let me share my screen. All right.
You go to the view that compared the old and the new from the northeast.
This one.
Yeah, I think that's helpful because here, I guess we can see a little of the context. It might be helpful to zoom in on that perspective. Yeah, so I think as we discussed this the last time, the overall, we discussed the overall form, we discussed its relationship to the existing building and saw plans that showed the existing footprint and what's being added on to that, and talked through the viability of it, and talked through the overall organization of materials. I think the refinements to this side of the building, the north side, breaking it up and clarifying clarifying the diagram of the building feel successful. I'd like an improvement on the north side. I still wonder about the materiality of the wrapper piece that's coming up and over. If you can just, yeah, exactly. Talk through, there's three sides to that. There's the south side, which continues along the south elevation. There's the edge facing the graph, and there's the inside face. Can you just talk through the materiality of each of those?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me switch to another view. Maybe it's easier. This one, maybe.
Okay.
All right. So basically, this wrapper piece goes from Tim said it goes from the south part all the way up and wraps up the massing to the north. We are having the same fiber cement material on the street facade as well as the south facade, but a slightly a lighter tone facing to the street, and we're going to have the wood tone cladding soffit, just create some just trying to bring some of the warmer tone from the street level all the way up to the surrounds of the building. And the in combination with this long openings as well as the balconies. On the edge of this say soffit, there will be light metal caps or claddings, just trying to wrap up the edge of this wrappers. And hopefully that answers your question, Tim.
What about this side? Yeah.
Oh, that's the same the fiber cement cladding with a slightly darker tone, but the same pattern.
Okay. So this, but where that arrow is, where this material is, both fiber cement, but two different types of fiber cement.
The same type of fiber cement, but in one is in white, or another one is in light gray.
Okay, so two different colors.
Yeah.
Same type. And then the material on the face here, that's different. That's metal.
Exactly. There'll be like a metal cap goes all the way around this wrapper.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder about that detail. You know, how that really gets built. It appears very thin, and it's three different materials coming together in outside edge. Seems like a very tricky detail to really work through.
It's also not listed on the material palette as well, the metal. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't show
I wonder,
you don't show the metal palette.
Would it be better if it was just a fiber cement or whatever this one is, kind of wrapping around this side and cladding it and, you know, giving the impression of depth? Yeah.
My only question to that, Tim, would be, what's going to be my next question? What type of fiber cement are we talking about? Because if we are dealing with Hardie, it's not going to be the type of material you want doing that. But if you have a Sembrite material or a Swiss Pearl, yes, you could do that with. So I guess, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Haosheng,
Yes.
what would be the material itself that you call fiber cement? What is the product? Is it a
So
Hardy? Is it a Nichiha? Swiss Pearl?
So if we can, or we haven't discussed that yet with the owner, but if we can afford the Swiss Pearl, that'd be great. I know Hardy is like widely being used, and it's much more affordable. But in terms of the like feasibility or constructability, I totally agree with you, Frank.
Yeah. So the detailing that Tim is talking about, I think would be difficult to do it with just a Hardy panel to successfully achieve that. So I think a little more clarity on what Tim is asking, if it's metal, how is this treated, and what is the metal panel, and what is the this fiber cement, and if you are using Hardy, it would be good to understand that, because we know what the capability of those materials are, and it's a really interesting looking building, and I want it to look interesting, but I don't want it to look bad because of detailing of a material that just cannot achieve the things that you want it to.
Totally understand.
I
Yeah,
think maybe one of the recommendations we could make would be that, I think particularly for this building, because it is a lot of fiber cement, and there are design guidelines specifically around use horizontal board side and things like that, that we recommend a material mock-up. But as we've done on a few other projects, also recommend that the architect come back prior to building permit with some of these key details.
so we certainly could supply the material details, architectural details, indicating the how those materials come together.
Yeah, but I think maybe to know that now, I think is really fundamental, because to Frank's point, you can't, you don't want to bring a Hardy board together without a trim, in the way you are bringing these materials together. So I feel like that is something we need to know now. Actually, I'm curious about the Hardy board, and the intent is whether it seems in your renderings that there's some quality, there's some variation in the shading of it. And I don't know if that is intrinsic to, I don't know, Swiss Pearl or the high density fiber cements, or whether that is something you can get in Hardy in both, you can get that in both products. I've never, yeah, Frank, yeah, they're pretty uniform in color, I think.
It's not the color, but it's the limitations of the panel itself. Hardy is really almost like a, if we think about it, it's almost like a higher end of drywall. Versus Swiss Pearl and Sembred, they're really pressed through color, hard, high density cement panel that you can actually use as a rain screen, that you can miter. It's just, it's just sexy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that
I know that. It's just, I don't know that it is a material that you can get that has a, variation, which is
you can. Yeah, no, you can.
It's quite rich. But I'm not sure you can get it in Hardy, which my experience is very uniform color. So, I mean, I think that becomes another issue also.
Huge,
and also
huge.
The shiny quality. I mean, everything about it really does seem like a high performance.
Correct.
Correct. So just this, again, this face, this looks like the large format panel with staggered joints.
How are you doing that, Tim? I'm trying to do that, but I can't think.
Oh man, I love this. I spend the whole day doing this. If you go up to the top, view options, annotate. But this face, how is this a horizontal board shingle? Is it a large format tile? What is the pattern of the fiber cement panels on this side?
Apparently, I probably need to do some research regarding to the panel materials that Frank mentioned. But if we use Hardy board as an example, the panels came in the 4x8 size, which we can basically cut it down into the different I say modules to put together as this pattern.
So just be mindful that when you do hardy, right, and you do those panels that's such nature, it's not a rain screen wall. You have to actually have a joint sealed between them. So if that is the intent, I think that your elevations should show that joint and should show that grid complex, because that is an aesthetic. And to Deborah's point, what is the color? Everything has this like very, Miami Beach look, which I like, but it's not going to end up being like that. There's going to be colors to it. So what are the colors? And the one thing that I would ask as well, because I would hate to, it's a very interesting design and there's really interesting moves to it. Again, we spoke about this before. You're probably going to be doing this to be passive house. So there's going to be a lot of equipment going onto this thing, and that equipment is going to probably end up on the roof. And you show a flat roof, but you show no equipment on the roof. And, it would be interesting to understand what is on the roof. And if we need to put a screen around this so that you don't see this. So I think whatever's going on the roof needs to be incorporated as part of the massing and the aesthetic of this building, so that it's understood as a whole concept. I would hate for it to be finished and you have pipes and you have ERV units and all of these things, and it's just not considered. So that is something that needs to be considered upon that, because also it has to be within 10 feet of a roof edge, because if it's not within 10 feet of a roof edge, you're going to have to put railings around this whole thing per OSHA requirements, and now that's going to look ugly, right? So I think it's something to be thought about now, so that the integrity of your building continues to stay as your intent and doesn't change. So we would like to also understand that. It's very important.
Yeah, and actually, I
Understood.
think this might be on the part of McGrath that slopes down, so you might actually see the roof. Or at least some part of it, especially if stuff is forward on the roof. So I think that's a great point, Frank. So this is you've got net zero. You're anticipating a net zero building, and with the codes and stuff, have you studied the windows, the apertures? Because that's also a tough.
Yeah,
And
we're
you
we're
probably
bring,
have a solid wall, but I was just curious whether you've sort of taken the next steps in regard to achieving code and net zero.
Yeah, that's a great question. We are talking with the sustainable consultant regarding to the window size and like having maybe triple glazing on the north facade, double glazing on the south facade to increase the natural radiation. Yeah, it's in progress, I would say, but for now, architecturally, we haven't incorporated that into our presentation yet, but it's being studied.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so commissioners, do we think we're potentially ready to take a vote on this? For the massing and the facade, since sort of there was further exploration on this. We'll start there before we go into design guidelines and additional guidance.
I think I personally, I'd be comfortable taking a vote on this tonight, but spending some time on the additional guidance and being
With
really clear about that.
conditions, though, right, Tim?
Pardon?
With conditions, right? Like
Oh,
the
yes,
things that we're talking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's just do
I'll-
them
I'll-
one at a time. Let's do
Yep.
the massing and
Sure.
and
I'm with
facade
Tim.
facade
Tim.
first. Okay. All right. So can I get a motion that this massing is approved to move forward?
So moved.
Motion by Deborah,
Second.
seconded by Frank, and I'm being pinged in the background going, they don't need a massing vote, and we already have a facade vote. Okay, I apologize, gang. Told you I was off my game tonight. All right, so what I have written down for the design guidelines is, or for the recommendations, is the commission would like to see a materials board prior to building permit. And then a mock-up panel on site of the materials once they are under construction.
Well,
I
we wanted to
also-
understand what the materials are beforehand.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna clarify. So as far as part of the materials submission, we need details, especially to the type of cementitious panel. And that needs to be a high density panel with through color. I need to double check if we can call out specific materials and recommend against hardy. Sort of because that was part of the conversation, I would like to do that, but I just want to make sure that we can talk about specific materials.
I think we can
And-
describe it generically without calling out specific product manufacturers.
Okay, perfect. And then as part of that material submission prior to building permit, we also want to see the equipment location on the roof that will meet the net zero and passive house standards and potentially affect the appearance, the massing of the building.
Views, yeah, so different
Yeah.
views of how that looks like, yeah.
Did I miss anything there? Because now's the time if we want to answer something there. All right. Um. Sorry, I'm getting all sorts of pings in the background. The facade has not been voted on, apparently. So we do need to, this is why my team is fabulous. They try to keep me on the straight and narrow. All right, so first of all, let's do a vote that this preferred facade is the direction that we want to go in. So can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Motion by Deborah. Do I have a second?
Second,
Seconded by Frank. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Frank,
yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Sherry.
Yes.
All right, so motion carries. We have an approved facade. All right. So hopefully I can get this right. So the motion that I'm going to recommend is that the design guidelines have been met and the additional recommendations and design guidance include the applicant will return to the UDC with a materials palette prior to building permit that shows the type of high density through color cementitious panel and the details around that. Especially as the projecting edge of the vertical and horizontals are articulated. That there be additional three-dimensional renderings that show the equipment location and any screening on the roof that is required for net zero or passive house standards. And that while prior to, I guess, prior to vertical construction, there be an on-site mock-up panel for review to make sure the details are as expected.
Understood.
So
That sounds right.
what did I
got-
miss,
so
Jim?
I've got one other question. So we talked about the ground floor. We saw the ground floor. I know, restrain myself from making the architectural comments. But, I mean, Frank, I'm sure you look at it too, Frank. There's door clearance issues and ADA clearance issues around the doors, and there's a very specific layout of the bike room, which I think is really important to this building, which has no parking. Is there a condition where if there are significant changes to the ground floor, it should come back for further review, or that should be reviewed with the commission as well?
I'm sorry, there's a question for me?
No, that's a question for Sarah. Is that an
I'm
appropriate?
sorry, I
condition?
missed that, Tim.
Is an
Sarah.
appropriate condition to say something like, if there are significant changes to the ground floor and the layout of the building following design review, that come back to the commission as well for further review?
I would support that.
Yeah, I think we can add that, and that'll be part of the, I would say, if we time that along with the materials review, would you be comfortable with that? Because that's prior to building permit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Okay, should I try that again? All right. Okay. So the motion that is on the table is that the design guidelines are met, and the additional guidance is that prior to building permit, the applicant returns with the materials palette and details of those materials, especially around the type of cementitious panel being used that is intended to be a high density through color panel. And how those details manifest themselves around the projecting wall and roof soffit elements.
And I
That,
would just add to that, how the building meets the ground.
okay. All right. All right, so that the materials review will explain how the building meets the ground, show any significant changes to the floor plan that might have taken place for ADA or other reasons. The type of high density through color cementitious panel and the details around the, I'm going to call it the soffit edge and vertical projection. And then with some additional three-dimensional renderings showing the equipment location on the roof to meet the Passive House and Net Zero standards. And the final one being the during construction, an on-site mock-up panel to show how those materials are detailed and how they go together.
We should at a certain point, Sarah, be able to give them parameters as to what is the size of what this this mock-up is that we would like to see, right? So I think that we should leave room for that, because do we want like a small, or do we want an actual, 4x8, so showing real materiality. So we should just be thoughtful of that. What is the size of what we?
Yeah, no, to your point, Frank, what we've done in the past is, for example, in Clarendon Hill, I worked with Icon about what the mock-up panel was, just to make sure that we could see each joint that was typical and where the materials
Okay.
abutted each other. So if
Sure.
you're comfortable with me working with the applicant to do that,
Sure,
we can go from there.
sure.
Okay, so after all that, do we have a motion? I think we should probably do two. So the first one being that the design guidelines have been met. And then the second motion will be all these additional,
Motion of the guidelines have been met.
all right, motion by Frank. Can I get a second?
Second,
Seconded by Deborah. Roll call vote. Frank,
Yes.
Deborah,
yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Sherry.
Yes.
Okay, and so now the additional guidance and recommendations, as I listed earlier, I really hope I don't have to go through all of those again.
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, roll call vote. Sherry,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
and Tim.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, team. We will see you again, as this project progresses. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, and so the last piece,
Sarah,
or-
so before we continue to the next one,
yes,
just letting everybody else go. Once everybody else is gone, right? One thing that I was going to suggest is that when dealing with materials review or approving materials, and I don't know how the rest of the group feels, it is my preference or my perception that approving materials online is really not the best way to review and approve a material. We're going to be looking at these materials, and they've been photographed on a different light, and it might not do justice to what they're trying to propose. So I don't know how the rest of the group feels, but for us to approve materials online with not knowing what kind of cameras they use or what kind of lighting they use, I think it's not doing justice to the project or anything. So it would seem to me that we shouldn't do that we should probably see them, have them be delivered somewhere, we see them or look at them so that we can look at them, so that, we have a better perception of that. I just wanted to bring that up to the group to see how they all feel about that. Because we're about to approve materials right now. And I was looking at some of the images and I'm like, I can't tell what's what.
Does anybody else have any comment on that? I mean, we could do the, this was one of those issues that the applicant did reach out to us, and we specifically asked them to photograph the, sort of different light and in different settings to try to capture that, the material. But Frank, I don't disagree with you. So as a
I just went through this with a project with the BPDA in Boston, and we had to build it on site. They wouldn't accept, or they said ship us all of the materials or build it, and it made sense.
Right. Well, would you each be willing to come to City Hall if an applicant brings the materials to City Hall and we set up appointments to make sure that they can be seen and felt and colors compared?
I would. It would
Yeah.
be to their advantage and to our advantage of providing a better service.
All right, so.
Yeah, I
as
agree,
far-
and I distinguish between, in the last review, we recommended two different stages of material review. One was the product itself and its detail, and that was prior to building permit. And I think something like that is something we could do online, because we're talking about details, we're talking about products that
Sure.
many of us are familiar with. But when it comes to actual colors, and those selections and how they come together.
And,
and relate to
yeah.
each other.
We see them together.
totally.
I agree with Frank. It's just
Yeah.
not possible.
I know Andrew is online. Madison, can you promote Andrew for a second? I just want a clarification on whether this project also has a requirement for an on-site mock-up. Thank you, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everybody. Could you clarify the question, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of their SPA, they had to come back with the material palette. My question is, are they also required to do an on-site material mock-up? Was
So
that
it
part
did-
of the approval?
It didn't clarify the type of review in terms of if it was on site or if it could be done online. All it stated was there needed to be a review of the material palette prior to the building permit.
Okay, but not specifically called out for an on-site mock-up panel.
Not from what I reviewed.
Okay.
If you give me 1 second, I can pull up the decision. But the applicant was prepared to either host a gathering on site or provide those materials to staff. I also believe the applicant is not here tonight.
Yeah, the applicant is not here this evening, so I think we can, if
Punt.
the commission is, well, I was gonna say, if the commission is okay with saying, sort of the applicant will deliver them to City Hall, and then we can arrange times for the commission to come by and take a look. We can
They
do
should be,
that this
yes,
evening.
but they should be placed in a manner that is logical. So that not just like, here's a bag of materials.
Right, no, we need labeled elevation.
Yes, we need,
Yes.
yes, exactly. We need a cohesive presentation, and yes,
Yeah.
I think that we could all probably make ourselves available to go look at it.
Sarah, to confirm, the condition just states the applicant shall submit a material palette for the UDC to review and comment.
Okay. Okay, so this one is not required to do the mock-up panel, but I think if we, I think at this point I'm not even sure, because this is other business. I don't even really think we need a vote on this. But let's, Andrew, let's reach out to the applicant, have them prepare labeled rendered elevations that clearly mark where each of the materials go. And then have them deliver them to City Hall so we can arrange for the commissioners to come in and look.
Will do.
All right. All right, thank you. Thank you all. With that, I just need one more motion.
I motion to end the meeting.
I
All right.
second that motion.
Motion to close by Frank, seconded by Deborah. Roll call. Sherry,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Deborah.
Yes.
All right, let the record show that this meeting ended at 7:52 p.m. Thank you
Can I ask-
all so much for your
Can I ask a
time.
quick question? Sorry, I should have done this before we ended, but I just have a very quick question, and if you can't answer it, that's fine. Does it make sense for us, maybe when we're in looking at materials at City Hall, to meet with the caseworkers just to say, hey, it's helpful to see a floor plan. It's helpful to see, because they're obviously, the applicant in the first one wasn't getting great advice, right? Like, I feel bad. Feels like they're
There-
getting told something and then they come here
Yeah.
and we're like, what's happening?
There are guidelines, so let me follow up with that. The thing that I do want to be careful of is open meeting law.
Right.
So we want to make sure that no more than two of you are in at the same time
Got it. Okay. Okay.
to review. So we can't really have a discussion about
Okay.
that. We need to be respectful. But yes, we can follow up with what the recommended material submissions are
Right.
and clarify that. So
But-
Madison and I'll work on pulling that together and making sure we've got what we need.
But
Yeah, and
we
happy to help
Yeah.
compile the
underst-
list.
But we understand the fact that we reviewed a project basically under an M3 that was under a different thing because it was not allowed to be in that. And
Yeah.
if
I
they
think-
need to come back, I think they need to realize that they can't present. I mean, the reason why these things were created, and I remember very specifically, is because exactly what you said is like you have these sites and they create a certain constraint. And because they create certain constraints, you can't build anything there yet unless you have more sites, right? And
Which is the hardship variant,
which is
yeah.
what we're trying to do, versus some
Yeah.
developer coming and saying, I'm gonna take this little corner and do this. This is an M3 site. You can't build row houses there because that's not its fitting environment. It's not a UR.
Well, what's being proposed is not fitting in the environment, to be clear, right?
But right, no, to that, Sherry, but we don't know what the guy would have had to propose if he would have had to do an apartment building, right? It would have
Yeah,
been
it
completely
would look
different.
similar though, right? Because they're just maximizing as much as
No,
they
it
possibly
wouldn't.
can.
He wouldn't be
Okay.
able to build. He can't build it because he doesn't have
Yeah,
enough.
so
He
this
can't.
this is
I think it's
something.
yeah. Oh.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Deborah.
I think it's an interesting, I mean, I went and street viewed it and realized it is right on, a highway. And it's establishing, I think a neighborhood that's gonna be changing. And I think it was
Yeah.
interesting. He kept referring, I was frustrated because he kept referring to this vernacular that this related to and never showed us a picture of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's so jarring. He probably was like, do not show that view. Right?
Yeah, I think we've
But
reviewed
but
it. The second project we reviewed is a 4-story building along the Graff Highway. Still single and two-family homes in that M4 district. So I think there's a decision about the zoning district there.
Yeah, this is something, and so, yeah, I apologize to everybody for this. This is something that apparently was, I need to follow up. We have a zoning compliance meeting with ISD every Thursday morning, so we will make sure that this is revisited, because if they came through for pre-submittal and neighborhood meeting with a different building type and then just changed it up on the fly,
Right.
sort of that's a different problem than somebody missing something in the initial review. So I think there's a couple of things here that, sort of we need to dig in and verify, but
It's
we
some red
will
flags.
definitely, yeah,
Some red
exactly.
flags.
Yeah. So we'll make sure we follow up on that before it's rescheduled, and I'll find out
Hey,
where the hardship variant stands too.
And Sarah,
Because
can I ask?
it shouldn't have been here this evening.
It should have been here. And can I ask you? It would be nice to get whatever information you find out about this, to get a heads up as to what you find out to the group,
Absolutely.
so that we are informed of it versus not, it disappears and then we never hear about it.
Right.
And then
Right.
like, okay, you know, oh, whatever, it like we fucked up and nobody knows anything about it. But the
Yeah.
idea that you tell us, oh yeah, this was, we didn't follow protocol, or this fell down the cracks, and you know, this is it, and this is, so that we are informed of a group that the things that we're saying and the things that we're looking at, we're trying to comply with what's the zoning, and we're trying to comply with what our roles are. So we
Yeah.
want to just know. So just keep us informed. And
Yeah.
I think that we would appreciate being part of that information.
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
Thank you.
once we get some answers to that, I'll make sure either I or the case planner will
Doesn't matter.
send
Thank you.
an email as an update. So,
Appreciate it.
and then when, you know, sort of the project comes back, then we can look at it in that form. So, all right.
Speaking, before we jump off, just very quickly, as long as you're here, Sarah, something
Uh-oh.
you mentioned to me. It's something I brought up either the last time we met or the time before. You know, I think this commission does have a specific role, but in my conversations with a lot of people, including those on the city council and others, not a lot of people know what it is that this commission does. And you know, our role in the design review process, and why design review is frankly important. The Boston Civic Design Commission each year produces an annual report. And I know there's other committees and commissions within Somerville that do something similar. You know, I was on the bicycle committee, we produced an annual report and delivered that to the city council each year. And you know, the feedback was, wow, I had no idea all this stuff was going on. And so what I brought up a couple of weeks ago was, you know, I wonder whether that would be something that would be appropriate, or that could be considered in creating an annual report that summarizes the work of this commission.
We've been asking for that for a long time, right, Tim?
Yeah, no, and I think that's doable. I mean, if that's something that you as a commission want to pull together, I think that's valuable
So we'll give you,
information.
yeah. So
Well, I think,
we'll give, yeah. So we'll give, I mean, I'll give an example, Tim, to what you're saying, as to maybe it makes sense. Is like, we approved 2 projects in Broadway. One was a lab building. We looked at it a couple of times, and across the street was a residential building. And we looked at them, we made them come back. They went through the process with us. We approved them and said like, oh yeah, this is great, move forward. And then the planning department came and went, bang, canceled, no more, we don't like it. And everything that we had recommended was never really ever considered. You know, and what was supposed to be a lab building is now becoming a residential complex. And the other part where Taco Loco was, which was a residential building that we looked at 3 times, is not coming back again as another, like, it's like, so they're getting, we go through this effort, not getting paid at all out of our own thing.
Oh, I get paid. You guys don't get paid?
We approve these things. We go through the process of 2-3 meetings and saying, now you've done something. Now you can go to the planning board. And then the planning board is just like, that, we don't like it. We don't take anybody's recommendations. Projects stopped. And it's frustrating, not only to the developers who are trying to do something because they come in front of us, but then we become, at a certain point, why are they even coming to us?
No, I
And-
know we have talked about this before, and have yet to figure out a good way to have that conversation, only because of, and I'm going to come back to open meeting law, that's getting a lot of people together in one space. So how we do that, I'm not quite sure, but let me revisit it with the liaisons and see if we can come up with a way to clarify that. As far as, you know, sort of an annual report goes, I think if that's something that the commission wants to do, I think that's very valuable. We can assist, but we don't really have the capacity to write something like that. But we can certainly assist in whatever way that might need to come to fruition. You're muted, Tim.
Tim, we can't hear you, Tim.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That's great. Maybe if it's helpful, I can just put together a couple thoughts on process and we can discuss at the next meeting. See if that works.
That would be appreciated.
Okay, yeah, and if you would, so for the next meeting, yeah, just coordinate with Madison to make sure that we can get it on the agenda under other business.
Okay. And I think Frank raises a good point about things content that report that would be helpful for people. I think there's also just the simple process of where a project starts and the recommendations this commission makes and where it ends up at the end. That would be helpful for people to understand, because I think there have been significant improvement. I can think of a few projects.
Yeah. No, I think some of the original submissions and then the final product would be,
Right.
you know, sort of visually are going to be quite impactful.
And I think that the group here has all been gone through the Boston process, and we understand how important it is to get the BCDC comments and incorporate them with the BPDA and the ZBA, and they all work together and they all respect each other's opinions, right? So what the BCDC says, it is brought through and it's respected. It's never just a recommendation. It is they are considered. We are professionals giving you a recommendation. The planning board does not have an architect in them. You know, right? They don't.
Yeah.
Frank, is that their mandate, part of their mandate, that they're to make recommendations, or?
Well, but they do.
Or is it
And
an
that's what I'm saying.
thing?
And that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, they don't take our recommendations as rule or recommendation. They're like, you know, they said this, I don't need to consider it. I'm going to make my own recommendations. And none of them are architects. So why are we sitting here on a Tuesday evening till 8 o'clock doing this shit, right? That's what I'm saying.
No, I mean the in Boston, BCDC.
The BCDC is, I mean, Tim, you know
BCDC,
this.
The
Is it
BCDC is
recommendation?
also, no, it's the BCDC is also a recommending authority.
But
So it's
they
not-
are
board
considered.
never, I mean, goes back, and it is extremely rare for the board to go back and change a design recommendation.
Yeah, and whatever the BCDC recommends, it's taken by rule of thumb. They're like, oh yeah, the BCDC said this. Have you done this? I mean, I present buildings all the time there. You know, so
And our
it's just
planning board has a little bit of a different idea about that. Well, and I think it's not always, I mean, to your point, Frank, to be perfectly honest, it's not always to the benefit of Somerville and not to the benefit of the public realm.
correct, and that's why
not the purpose of creating this annual report to call out the planning board.
right,
But
and that's why I'm
in
bringing
an
it up. Tim.
instance where that's happened, that could be public content.
Yeah, and I think we can handle this in the spirit of collaboration. Let
And I'll
me
note one other thing, this commission has requested multiple times to meet with the planning board and just say, hello.
Yes.
Multiple times.
Yes. No, I'm aware
My
of that. but
understanding is the chair of the planning board said he doesn't want to meet with us.
there's legal difficulties to overcome with the but I think we've also had so many joint hearings recently for the planning board with the land use committee, and so that's even interrupted their regular scheduled meetings. So let's see what we can do about getting,
Right. So you have
getting
to, I
the-
mean, yeah, on the last day, you have to remember, Sarah, this was before, way before you. When they created this commission, and Deborah and I will remember this, when they created this commission, it was because, you know, Assembly Square was starting and all of these things were starting, and the city was just like scrambling. It's like, we don't have professionals to help us.
right,
And we need them, right? So Joe said, we need to get some architects on board. We need to create a design review committee to help us make these decisions. And, you know, Deborah was hired to be part of like the decision making in Assembly Square and all of that area. And I was brought in to do the other part of Somerville. And then they merged the two at a certain point. But it was a need that the city knew at that point. And then Sherry was part of that as well, you know, that the city knew that they needed. And they created that because somebody was smart enough to understand that.
Was
But
that
they needed,
Joe who was on the commission?
Joe Curatone was the one who
Oh,
said,
no, Joe Curatone. Okay. No,
Yeah,
there was
Yeah.
somebody
Joe-
from the planning department on the commission.
it was
when it first started, yeah.
oh God, oh, what's his name? He was my neighbor in Lowell Street before I moved.
Yeah.
Oh God, he was yes, he was a planning board member and he served in the design review committee as well.
Joe
Yes,
Favarolo?
something like that. No, not Favarolo. Derillo.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, what was his first name?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
he was he was
Yeah.
before me, but I know who you mean.
Something like
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe.
And he
Jim?
served on
Jim.
both. Jim, correct. Yeah, Jim. And he still lives in that in Summer Street. But it was this congregation of like, we need these people who are professionals. We need a landscape architect. We need an architect. We need a lawyer. We had lawyers for a
Yeah.
while in the design review committee, and it was you know, a really good group of people, and we got there to make recommendations. And, you know, Assembly Square is successful because of the things that Deborah was doing there, you know, when she was, you know, tasked to help these people, you know, and they saw the successful of that. And then they said, maybe we need to do this throughout the city,
Anyway,
you
yeah.
know, and it became citywide. And then they said, we don't need two anymore. We need one. And then they joined us. And then, you know, Sherry came in and Deborah was there and I was there, and it helped, right? But it seems to be that people a lot of times don't want to hear the opinions that we have. And at a certain point, you know, I'm like, why am I doing this if nobody's taking my opinion at any point seriously? You know, it's like, sorry, Sherry, go ahead.
It's okay. I just have a super quick question. Can I ask you guys, sorry, I'm changing subject also, about that Pearl Street case? Am I allowed to?
Not, no, now that
No.
we've officially closed the meeting, we
That's fine.
can't.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll see it again. I'll just
Yes.
jot my
Yeah.
jot
Yeah.
my notes down.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I think your point's right, Frank. We obviously, it's frustrating if we're not taken seriously and not having a positive impact.
I mean, that's what we're all doing it, right? It's like, you know, we're all
Yeah.
doing it because we care and we all
Yeah.
live here and we all want to do that impact. I mean, you know,
No,
we do.
But if
yeah,
we're hitting our
I
heads against a wall, then
Right, right.
a hardy board wall, no.
A rice-based material wall.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear, and it doesn't count for much, but you know I appreciate the work that you guys do. But yeah, like I said, let me get a meeting with both liaisons and let's see if we can figure out a way to pull off this
That'd be great.
collaboration meeting.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
All right.
My grievances.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
All right, good to see you all.
Bye,
Good
guys.
night, all.
Bye.
Good night.
Everyone.